When are you two going to start a family? That single question dropped into the room like a bomb. Everyone laughed, except me, because the man sitting beside me, smiling politely, had already started a family. Just not with me. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. It was my sister-in-law's baby shower. Pink balloons floated against white walls, the smell of cupcakes and perfume filling the air. Everyone was glowing, except me. I was sitting beside my husband Miles, who looked handsome as always, laughing too easily, talking too loudly, pretending like everything was perfect. We'd been married for 4 years. People always said we were the picture-perfect couple, but lately things didn't feel perfect. Miles had been coming home late, saying work was busy. He'd stopped looking me in the eyes when we talked. And now, sitting beside him at that baby shower, I could feel how far away he'd become, like a stranger wearing my husband's face. The question came from his cousin, a woman named Dana. She said it with a teasing grin, the kind you can't be mad at. "So, when are you two going to start a family?" she asked, holding her round belly like a trophy. Miles gave a quick laugh, short, nervous. His eyes darted toward the cake table, anywhere but me. I smiled weakly, trying to ignore the twist in my chest. "We're not in a rush," I said, even though I wanted a baby more than anything. The laughter faded, and the conversation moved on. But I couldn't. That single question kept echoing in my head. "When are you two going to start a family?" I looked at Miles again. He was scrolling on his phone under the table, pretending to listen. When our eyes met, he quickly set it down and gave me a small smile. The kind of smile you give when you're caught doing something you shouldn't. Something wasn't right. Later that night, after everyone had left and the last of the gifts were open, I asked him softly, "You okay?" "Yeah," he said too fast. "Just tired." His voice was flat, distant. He kissed my forehead, then turned away to check his phone again. I saw the glow of a message light up the screen. He tilted it, hiding it from me. I didn't say anything. I just watched him. My chest felt hollow. That night, as he slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The laughter from the baby shower replayed in my head, mixing with that question. "When are you two going to start a family?" I thought about how his hands had trembled slightly when Dana asked it, how he couldn't look at me. And that's when I knew deep down, he was hiding something. I didn't know what yet, but I could feel it in my bones. The cracks in our perfect marriage had finally begun to show. And that simple question had pulled the first thread. The ride home was silent, heavy with things neither of us wanted to say. Miles kept his eyes on the road, one hand drumming on the steering wheel, the other gripping it too tight. I watched the streetlights flash across his face, calm, unreadable, like nothing had happened. I wanted to ask him about that look he gave me back at the baby shower, the way he laughed too fast and couldn't meet my eyes. But the words sat like stones in my throat. Every time I opened my mouth, he turned up the radio a little louder. By the time we pulled into our driveway, the silence between us felt louder than the music. Inside, he kicked off his shoes and headed straight for his office. "I've got a few work emails to finish," he said, not looking at me. His voice was too casual, too practiced. I nodded, pretending to believe him. I knew his work habits. Miles never brought work home. Not once. Hours passed. I sat on the couch, staring at our wedding photo on the mantel, the one where he's looking at me like I was his whole world. Now, I wasn't sure he could even look at me at all. When he finally came to bed, it was past midnight. He smelled faintly of cologne, not his usual kind, something sweeter, unfamiliar. He slid under the covers, kissed my cheek like a stranger, and rolled away. "You okay?" I asked quietly. "Just tired," he murmured. The next morning, he left early. "Big meeting," he said. No goodbye kiss. Just keys jingling, the door closing, and then nothing. I tried to shake off the feeling clawing at my chest, but it followed me everywhere, through my coffee, through my drive to work, through every moment he didn't text me back. By the end of the week, I decided to stop making excuses for him. One afternoon, I borrowed his car to run errands. As I set my purse on the passenger seat, something caught my eye. A black phone charger coiled neatly in the center console. I froze. Miles didn't have 2 chargers. He barely remembered to bring one. My hands trembled as I picked it up. It wasn't ours. The cord was a different brand, the kind that came with newer phones. I checked the glove compartment, gum wrappers, receipts, nothing unusual. But underneath the receipts was a faint trace of lipstick on a napkin. Not my shade. Not even close. My stomach dropped. When I got home, I didn't mention what I found. I just watched him. Every time he smiled, every time he picked up his phone, I felt that chill again, stronger now, sharper. That night, as he showered, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at his briefcase. I almost opened it. Almost. But I didn't need proof to know something had changed. The warmth that used to fill our home had vanished. What was left was quiet, and in that quiet, I could hear the truth whispering. Something was wrong with Miles, and soon I was going to find out what. The sky was deep gray that evening, the kind of color that made the world feel heavier. Miles said he'd be late again, another project, another client dinner. His tone was smooth, too smooth, like a man who'd practiced lying until it felt natural. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the clock. Each minute ticked by like a dare. My gut told me not to stay still anymore. I grabbed my coat, keys, and phone, and walked out before I could talk myself out of it. I kept a few car lengths behind him on the highway. His taillights glowed faint red through the drizzle, leading me into parts of town we never visited. He finally turned into a narrow street lined with small shops and restaurants. I parked 2 spaces back and watched him step out, buttoning his jacket, checking his reflection in the window. He looked excited. Lighter. Someone I barely knew. Then she appeared. A woman with long auburn hair and a soft roundness to her body. She wore a simple blue dress that hugged a belly already showing. She smiled when she saw him, and he lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. They went inside together, hands brushing. I waited a few minutes, then followed, keeping to the shadows near the window. The restaurant was small, warm, the kind of place made for quiet dinners and whispered laughter. They sat in the corner booth, candles flickering between them. He reached across the table, his hand resting gently on her stomach. She laughed, covering his hand with hers. The sight knocked the air out of me. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe she was an old friend. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But the tenderness in his eyes erased every doubt. That was love. That was pride. I felt my knees weaken. My phone slipped in my sweaty hands as I opened the camera, heart pounding so loud I could hear it. I snapped a few pictures through the window, each one another wound I couldn't stop reopening. He leaned in to kiss her forehead. She closed her eyes, smiling. I couldn't breathe. People walked past me on the sidewalk, laughing, unaware that my life had just split in two. I stepped back into the rain, letting it soak my hair and blur the streetlights. My fingers shook as I checked the photos, proof of what I already knew but couldn't accept. I didn't cry, not yet. I just walked. Blocks away, I stopped under a streetlight and stared at the wet pavement. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. When I finally drove home, I didn't remember the turns, the traffic, nothing. I only remember the image of his hand on her belly, protective, tender, proud. The hand that used to hold mine. I parked in the driveway, left the lights off, and sat in the dark. My hands still trembled, gripping the phone that held the truth. I didn't know what I'd do next. But I knew this. Miles wasn't just lying. He was living another life. The morning after I followed him, everything felt strange. The walls, the air, even the sound of the coffee maker. Miles hummed softly as he poured his drink, acting like the world hadn't just shifted. I forced a smile, steadying my voice when I asked about his late night. He said it went well. His eyes didn't even flicker. I kissed his cheek before he left, pretending nothing was wrong. My heart was pounding, but my face stayed calm. I'd learned something the night before. Miles was capable of building an entire life out of lies. If he could do that, I could learn to hide my truth too. The moment the door shut behind him, I opened his laptop. He'd left it on the counter, plugged in, as if daring me to look. I scrolled through emails, files, receipts, all clean. But when I checked the banking app, my stomach turned. There were transfers marked as personal support, regular amounts sent to someone named K. Arden. I didn't know the name, but I knew the pattern. Same day each month, round numbers hidden under harmless labels. I wrote it down, then searched through our old records. Nothing. It was a ghost trail, perfectly hidden until now. Later, when he called to say he'd be home late again, I kept my voice light. "Don't work too hard," I said, pretending not to hear the lie hiding in his tone. As soon as the call ended, I opened my old photo albums, flipping through the years before we were married. College pictures, mutual friends, old memories. That's when I saw her, Kara Arden, standing beside Miles at a party. Long auburn hair, same soft smile I'd seen through the restaurant window. My breath caught. Back then, she'd been a quiet problem, a name that used to start small arguments. He told me she'd wanted him back when we got engaged. I remembered the late-night messages, the fights, his promise that she was just a mistake. He swore it ended before I ever came into the picture. I believed him. Now, the truth was staring at me from an old photo, her arms around his shoulders, his eyes half closed, smiling in that same way he used to smile at me. My chest burned. I went back to the laptop, checking the messages attached to the transfers. Short notes, just a few words each. "You're covered. Got it handled. For the appointment." Appointment. The word felt like a punch. I closed the laptop slowly, pressing my palms against the counter to keep from shaking. He'd chosen her again. After everything, after years of promises, he'd gone back to the same woman who once tried to break us apart. When Miles came home that night, I greeted him with a hug. He smiled, kissed my forehead, thanked me for dinner. He didn't notice the slight tremor in my hands or the way my eyes lingered on him too long, because now I knew the name of the woman carrying his secret, and I knew this was only the beginning of the end. I woke up the next morning with a calm I didn't recognize. The rage I'd felt the night before had cooled into something sharper, focused. Miles thought I was blind, but I'd seen enough to know better. I couldn't confront him yet. He'd twist it, deny it, turn it into another argument about my trust issues. No, if I was going to end this, I'd end it smart. I started small. I waited for him to leave for work, then pulled out a notebook and made 2 lists. What was his, what was ours? Mortgage, savings, car, every bill, every shared account. I logged into the bank from my phone, screenshotting balances, transfers, anything that might disappear later. Each detail went into a folder I named recipe. If he ever checked my files, it would look like nothing more than grocery notes. Then I called a lawyer. The woman's voice was calm, almost gentle, as I explained what was happening. You don't need to confront him yet, she said. You just need to protect yourself first. She told me what documents to copy, which accounts to move, how to freeze joint credit quietly. I took notes until my hand cramped. When I hung up, I felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, I had control. That night, I made dinner and laughed at his stories. I even leaned into his touch when he brushed past me. My heart didn't race anymore. It studied. Every word, every glance. I watched him like someone learning a dangerous animal's habits. When he left his phone on the counter to shower, I picked it up. I wasn't even nervous. The passcode was the same. Inside were messages to a contact saved only as K. They weren't long, just a string of emojis, half-sentences, pictures that didn't need captions. Her belly was bigger now. I saved them all to my own drive. The next day, I went through his emails. He'd been careful, deleting most of them, but not careful enough. A few confirmations from hotel bookings, a rental car invoice, an account set up under another address. I printed everything, slipped the pages into a manila envelope, and hid it beneath the lining of my suitcase. At night, I continued my role, wife, partner, the woman who still believed in him. I cooked, cleaned, smiled at the right moments. He thanked me for being patient, said things would get better soon. I nodded, tucking away the words like evidence. Weeks passed like that, quiet mornings, polite dinners, late nights of research and planning. I moved part of my paycheck into a new account, under my maiden name. I met the lawyer again, this time face to face. We talked about options, divorce, asset division, alimony. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friend. By the time I walked out of that office, I had a plan. A clean exit, timed to perfection. Revenge wasn't the goal anymore. It was justice, quiet, deliberate, and final. Rain swept across the windshield as Miles packed his suitcase. He moved quickly, tossing shirts and ties inside like a man late for a flight. It's a 3-day conference, he said, zipping it shut. Don't wait up for me. His tone was smooth, almost rehearsed. I nodded, pretending to adjust his collar while studying his eyes. They wouldn't stay still. After he left, I waited 15 minutes before taking my key. The rain hadn't slowed, but neither did I. I knew where he was going. Kara's due date had been that week. The timing was too perfect to ignore. I drove across town, following the familiar route toward the city hospital. The parking lot was full, lights glowing through the storm. I found his car easily, same license plate, same dent on the back bumper. My pulse thudded in my throat. I sat there for a while, watching people rush in and out under umbrellas. Families hugged, nurses wheeled bassinets, faces glowed through glass doors. I could have turned back, but I needed to see it with my own eyes. Inside, the smell of antiseptic hit hard. I kept my head down, walking past waiting rooms and nurses' stations until I found the maternity ward. A few feet ahead, through a half-open door, I heard his laugh. I stopped. Through the gap, I saw him standing by a hospital bed. His jacket was off, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked peaceful, proud, the kind of man people trusted. In his arms was a baby wrapped in a pink blanket. Kara lay against the pillows, pale but smiling up at him. Her hair clung to her face, her hand resting on his arm. He kissed her forehead gently. The gesture was small, but it cut deeper than any word ever could. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to breathe. The world blurred around the edges. A nurse walked past and offered me a kind smile, thinking I was another visitor. I forced one back, swallowing the sob that threatened to escape. My hands trembled as I reached into my pocket. My phone was still there, but I didn't take pictures this time. I didn't need more proof. The truth was already branded into me. I watched him for a moment longer. He rocked the baby slowly, whispering something I couldn't hear. Kara reached up and touched the child's cheek. The sight was unbearable, a family that should have been mine. A tear slipped down my face, then another. I didn't wipe them away. When I turned to leave, the hallway felt endless. Each step echoed like a goodbye. I passed a window where the rain still hammered the glass. For a second, I saw my reflection, pale, hollow-eyed, but steady. Outside, the storm had calmed. I walked to my car, opened the door, and sat in silence. My clothes were damp, my hands cold, but something inside me had gone still. The pretending was over. The waiting, the hoping, done. Whatever came next, it wouldn't include him. I spent the next week preparing the house, every detail perfect. Miles thought it was for his birthday, a surprise dinner to celebrate family. I let him believe that. He'd been lighter lately, humming in the mornings, smiling at texts when he thought I wasn't looking. It made pretending easier. I sent out invitations to his family and closest friends, even Kara. I used a fake number, posing as someone from his office. The message was simple: special dinner in honor of Miles. Please keep it a surprise. She responded with a cheerful, wouldn't miss it. The night arrived. Candles flickered. The smell of roasted garlic filled the air. Soft music played through the speakers. Miles came home looking stunned. "You did all this for me?" he asked, kissing my cheek. I smiled. "Of course. You deserve it." One by one, guests arrived, his parents, his sister, old college friends. Laughter filled the house, everyone toasting to him, to life, to family. I moved through the crowd with practiced grace, topping off glasses, pretending warmth I didn't feel. Then the doorbell rang again. Miles answered it, his face freezing when he saw her. Kara stepped in, holding a small gift bag. Her hair was neatly tied, her smile nervous. I watched him blink rapidly, trying to hide his shock. "I didn't know she was invited," he murmured to me. I tilted my head. "Really? I thought you'd be happy to see her." Before he could respond, I clinked my glass. "Everyone, thank you for coming. I put together something special, a slideshow to celebrate all the people who make Miles who he is." The lights dimmed. The first images appeared on the wall, photos from our wedding, vacations, birthday. People smiled, clapped. Miles even looked touched. Then the next image flickered, a picture of him in that restaurant booth, his hand resting on Kara's belly. The room went quiet. The next slide appeared, text messages, then hotel receipts, then a photo of him holding the baby in the hospital. Gasps filled the room. His mother covered her mouth. His father's eyes darkened. Miles jumped to his feet. "Lena, what is this?" His voice cracked. I stayed seated, calm. "You wanted a celebration. I thought honesty deserved one too." Kara stood frozen by the doorway, face pale. The baby's pacifier clip hung from her purse. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Miles turned toward her. "You shouldn't have come. You invited me," she whispered. Laughter broke somewhere in the back, bitter, disbelieving. His sister muttered something sharp under her breath. The tension in the room thickened until even the music cut off. He looked at me, eyes wide. "Please, not like this." I rose slowly, meeting his stare. There's no other way left. No one spoke. Plates sat untouched, candles flickered low. The slideshow looped back to the first picture. Our wedding day, his hand on mine, smiles that once meant forever. This time, no one clapped. The silence that followed was unbearable. The slideshow still glowed faintly on the wall, frozen on that last image of Miles holding Kara's baby. His friends avoided his eyes, whispering under their breath. The clinking of glasses stopped. Even the air felt heavy. Miles stepped forward, voice shaking. "Lena, please let me explain." I didn't move. His mother rose from her seat, her expression tight with anger. "Explain what?" she snapped. "That you've been lying to your wife? To all of us?" He turned to her, desperate. "Mom, it's not what it looks like." His father's voice cut through the noise. "Enough. You've shamed this family." Kara's hands trembled as she picked up her purse. "I shouldn't have come," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. The baby stirred, letting out a small cry that seemed to echo through the room. Miles reached for her. "Kara, wait." She pulled back. "Don't. You said she'd never find out. You said it was handled." Her words landed like blows. Gasps circled the table. Miles froze, his jaw clenching as his whole act crumbled in front of everyone. His mother turned away. "Get out of my sight." Kara hurried toward the door, the baby's cries fading as she disappeared down the hallway. The door slammed behind her, leaving only the sound of rain tapping against the windows. Miles looked around, eyes wild. "Lena, please. I can fix this. I'll end it with her. I'll do whatever you want." I picked up a folder from the sideboard and placed it on the table. "You already did." He frowned, confused. "What is this?" "Read it." He opened the folder, his eyes scanning the first page. I watched his face drain of color as he reached the last line. "You filed for divorce?" His voice cracked, low, almost a whisper. "It's already finalized," I said softly. "You just need to sign." He sank into a chair, staring at the papers like they were something alive. "You planned this," he muttered. "All of it." I didn't answer. Around us, his family began to gather their coats, quietly avoiding his gaze. No one spoke to him. Not one person offered comfort. His sister brushed past him, muttering, "You deserve worse." When the door shut behind the last guest, the house felt enormous. He sat there with his hands over his face, breathing heavily. I watched him for a moment, feeling nothing but exhaustion. He looked up finally, tears streaking his cheeks. "Lena, please, I still love you." I met his eyes and saw the same man who had once promised me forever. Only now he was small, broken, afraid. "Love," I said quietly, "doesn't lie like that." I turned and walked toward the kitchen, my heels echoing across the tile. Behind me, I heard him start to sob, deep, guttural sounds that didn't move me at all. The revenge I'd planned had landed exactly where I wanted it to. He'd lost everything in one night. But as I stood alone in the kitchen, I realized victory didn't bring peace. The ache inside me was still there, sharp and hollow. Justice had come, but so had the emptiness it left behind. The apartment smelled faintly of salt and paint, the kind of scent that belongs to beginnings. It was small, one bedroom, a narrow kitchen, and a balcony that looked out toward the ocean. The sound of waves drifted in through the open window, steady and calm. I stood in the middle of the empty living room, holding a single box, feeling the weight of silence. For the first time in years, it was mine. All of it. Days passed in quiet rhythm. Mornings with coffee on the balcony, afternoons filled with unpacking, nights spent listening to the sea breathe. I took a job at a small design firm downtown, nothing glamorous, but enough to pay rent and keep my mind busy. The people there didn't know my story. They just saw a woman who showed up early, smiled politely, and never talked about her past. I liked that. The loneliness hit in waves, especially at night. The bed felt too big, the air too still. But I didn't fill the silence with anyone's voice but my own. I cooked simple meals, lit candles, learned how to exist without waiting for footsteps in the hall. Each day, the ache faded a little more, replaced by something quieter, relief. It was on a Sunday afternoon that I met Eli. He lived across the hall, tall and soft-spoken, always carrying a stack of books. He knocked on my door holding a small potted plant. "Welcome to the building," he said, smiling shyly. "This one doesn't die easy." Figured that might be a good fit for someone still settling in. I laughed, the sound strange in my own ears. "That's perfect," I said, taking it from him. "I'm not great at keeping things alive." He shrugged lightly. "Then it'll learn to survive with you." After that, we crossed paths often, in the hallway, at the mailbox, sometimes on the beach when I walked after work. He never asked questions, never pried. We talked about small things, music, coffee, the weather, the stubborn cat that lived under the stairs. His company was quiet, steady. One evening, we sat on the balcony, watching the sun sink into the water. The light turned the waves gold, and for a moment, the world looked soft again. He told me about fixing up old boats for a living, how he liked working with things that had been broken. I smiled, thinking how some people were built to mend what others throw away. When he left that night, I stood at the door long after it closed, listening to the distant hum of the ocean. There was no rush in me anymore, no hunger to fill the emptiness. It was enough to feel safe, to know that not every story ends with betrayal. I placed the plant he'd given me on the windowsill. The leaves caught the moonlight, green and stubborn. It made me smile. Maybe it would survive after all. And maybe in time, so would I. The invitation came tucked inside a pastel envelope, tied with a ribbon. It was for a coworker's baby shower, just a small gathering at her house by the park. I stared at it for a long time before deciding to go. Enough time had passed. The wounds had closed, if not completely healed. I wasn't the same woman who had once smiled through someone else's celebration, pretending her world wasn't breaking. The day arrived bright and warm, the kind of afternoon that smelled of fresh grass and frosting. The house was full of soft laughter, pastel decorations, and the faint sound of music drifting from a speaker. I brought a gift wrapped neatly in blue paper, a small blanket I'd sewn myself during quiet evenings by the coast. People hugged, toasted, and passed around cupcakes topped with tiny sugar rattles. I smiled, genuinely this time. The air didn't feel heavy anymore. I was simply another guest, not a woman defined by what she'd lost. As I helped arrange the gifts on a table, a voice rose behind me, cheerful, teasing. "So, Lena," one of the girls asked, "when are you going to start a family of your own?" The question floated in the air, light and harmless, just like it had once before. For a heartbeat, I froze. The room seemed to fade, the clink of glasses, the laughter, the shimmer of sunlight through lace curtains. A wave of memory washed over me. Another party, another question, another life that had ended the same day it was asked. Then I turned, smiling softly. "When it's not built on lies," I said. Laughter followed, easy, innocent laughter. They thought it was a joke. Someone nudged my shoulder playfully, and the conversation shifted to something else. But inside, the words settled like a quiet truth. I stepped out to the porch a little later, the noise of the party fading behind me. The garden stretched out under the afternoon sun, filled with the scent of blooming roses. Children played on the grass, chasing bubbles that caught the light before bursting. For a long moment, I just watched them, their laughter, their unfiltered joy. The wind lifted a strand of my hair, brushing it across my face. I closed my eyes, breathing in the salt carried from somewhere far beyond the city. Life, fragile and imperfect, was still moving forward, and this time I was part of it. Eli had texted earlier that morning, a simple message asking if I'd join him for coffee later. No pressure, no expectations, just a quiet invitation. I typed a short reply. I'd like that. I looked back through the doorway, where my co-workers were laughing around the gift table. My heart didn't ache anymore. It just beat, steady and sure. As I turned to leave, the sunlight caught my reflection in the glass. Calm eyes, a faint smile. The woman staring back wasn't broken. She was simply new. And somewhere deep inside, I knew the next chapter would begin not with another question, but with my own answer. Do you think I did the right thing by walking away? Or should I have given him another chance? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like mine, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell.